Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. That task out of the way. It's time now for the rest of the show. I've got a full 2 hours besides telling you the day and date planned for you. Well, okay, that's not exactly true. There's definitely a full 2 hours worth of stories to talk about. Is there a plan for doing it? Well, there's this plan. Greg Dworkin will join us, and he'll talk about some stories, probably for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we will agree that those are stories that we should be talking about. After that, the plan is to choose from an assortment of stories that absolutely, positively must be discussed at some point, whether that is now or years in the future when we have to go back and point out that we knew about these stories but forgot to bring them to you on the air, but definitely had them ready for you. Okay. Well, Greg indicates that he is ready to roll. He says he can waste time with the best of them, and we'll be calling on him to do just that. Interesting day, as all of them are these days. Plenty to round up. Yesterday, some action in the Senate on the impeachment front. The impeachment articles having been exhibited, as we said on Monday. The time for the Senate to choose how it will conduct the trial, to choose its or to vote on its orders of proceeding for the trial came yesterday, and that was the first opportunity for Rand Paul to make a motion to dismiss the case for lack of jurisdiction, stating the Republican belief, really entirely fabricated for this occasion, that the Senate does not have jurisdiction to try an impeachment case against an officer, or rather, in this case specifically, against a president who is no longer in office. Of course, as we've explained to you for about, well, I guess as long as the show has been on, anytime the subject has come up, the question of whether or not you can try an impeachment or impeach a person who has left office, the answer has always been yes, because the answer is yes. There's precedent for it. You all know it. And we've known about it since I think before the show even came on the air, the Belknap case. This was something I was or became aware of back when we ought to have been impeaching George W. Bush, but weren't doing it. And when his term appeared ready to come to an end, the question arose, and it was answered by the Belknap case. And so we've known it for quite some time. Anyway, Rand Paul testing the strength of the Republican troops who still support Donald Trump in all of this, and positing that the case ought to be dismissed. The reaction among Democrats, I think predictably, we may have predicted this one correctly in talking to Armando about it yesterday, was that they would move to table his motion to dismiss. They did, and the test vote, as the people in the media love to call it, came out, I don't know. I don't know what people expected to see, I suppose. 5 Republican votes in favor of the motion to table Rand Paul's motion to dismiss. So the position in favor of going ahead with the trial was a yes vote, or an aye vote, as they sometimes say. I forget how they term them in the Senate, for tabling the motion. So 55 total votes for tabling the motion. Therefore, the motion was tabled. 45 votes against. That was the position most Republicans took in order to shield Donald Trump from accountability for inciting the insurrection and armed attack on the Capitol. And yeah, that's kind of where we are at this stage of the game. So that's that. The motion is tabled, and the trial goes forward as expected. Rand Paul ran around the internets, did a little lap around the internets, no doubt doing some fundraising off of the result and portraying it as some sort of victory. He was just telling everybody, 45 Republican senators believe that it's unconstitutional. to proceed with this trial. Unfortunately, like we've said a couple of times in the last few days, losers don't set precedents. You can't set a precedent with a minority view. That's not the way they work. What happened, for all of those who might have seen his tweet explaining his position and what he thought it really meant that too long didn't read, was he lost. They asked the question again, is the Belknap precedent real? Is it okay to impeach and try former federal officials? The answer was yes when they started. The answer is yes now that they're done. So there you go. We've held the line on that one, and what you learned here on the show, or wherever you might have figured out that the Belknap precedent exists, it still exists. You were right, and he's still wrong. But oddly, he's the one raising money from it, and we're not. Still waiting for the checks to come pouring in. I don't know. Maybe George Soros doesn't know we've done this. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is here. This will probably double our income the moment we start speaking. So let's get to it, Greg. Good morning. How are you?
Right. You should double what you pay me also.
Right. Absolutely.
So consider it done, right? So,
Yep.
Nothing times nothing is still nothing. But, the weird thing is, you might have learned about it from Congressional Research Service, CRS, which is nonpartisan, non-binding, but awfully informative, if not downright entertaining. And I have to say, over the years, between you and Armando, since I'm a regular listener to the show, I could get on the internet and somebody would say, well, the Senate can't do this. And I would say, Belknap. And they would say, oh, my gosh, you must be a constitutional scholar, a lawyer, or maybe even a historian, because now I have to go look up Belknap and see what you're referring to. I'd best treat the next tweet response with a degree of respect until I figure out what's going on. And I'm laughing, and I'm just saying, Belknap.
Yeah, that's all I
William
know.
Belknap. He's the guy at the local deli, who gets my sandwiches ready.
Right.
And Belknap told me the Senate could do it.
Yeah, well,
that's as much as I know.
It's true, and lots of people were prepared for it, and it's good news, and it's nice to see. And now they are, of course, learning talking points from Republicans about why Belknap doesn't apply, but it does
because the Senate said it does. So me not being a lawyer, my basic position was, you go and you read the law and the Constitution, stuff like that. Here's how it works in practical politics. If the Senate votes that they can do it, they can do it. And what are you going to do about it, bud?
Really nothing to do about it. And if you're an originalist, there's no getting around who's got the sole power. So, it doesn't really get clearer than that in constitutional language.
Right. So the experts can clear me up on that. But the fact of the matter is, in practical hardball politics, that's how it works. And I'm telling you, that's how it works. And you know what? That's how it worked. Here's the other thing that I learned from years of listening to Kagro in the morning. Oh. And that is that parties generally vote on party lines when it comes to procedural votes. So the fact that it's 55-45 as a, quote, test case may or may not be true because you expect the party to vote with your party on this period. And the fact that they got 5 votes that didn't, to me, was, wow, that's more than I expected.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise that they didn't have to try and break any kind of a tie. So that was good news.
And we'll get to that because ties are going to come. But, in this particular setting, sure, the conventional wisdom is probably right, and he probably won't be convicted. He's already been impeached twice.
Yes.
But like the other one, this is an opportunity. We'll see if they do it. Adam Schiff did a wonderful job, much better than the House versions of these things, where you get 2 minutes to make your case to local TV. Mm-hmm. But the House managers in the Senate, when they're invited in, and that formality of having them walk over was pretty impressive, and like the world was watching. So when they go there and they make their summary, they have an opportunity to prosecute the Republican Party and Trump with him, with it. So, that's the value of it. You don't have to be convicted, although conviction has its own merits, and he should be convicted. But if you're going to outline the fact that you have a treason and seditionist party who's perfectly okay with killing people as long as you're in the other party, that is worthwhile in terms of talking about. Because as we talked about on the show Monday, the problem so much now isn't Trump. It's that the Republican Party as a whole, as a majority of the majority, as Dennis Hastert used to say, are terrible people who would just as likely kill you as not so that they can keep their white Christianist power.
Yes. Frankly, that's it. and we're done for the day. But yeah, well, it's true, and it's becoming more and more obvious. And again, things that we alerted to you to here on the show many moons ago. And I have to reiterate every time we say this, thanks to solid reporting from in the district and sometimes on the national level about these things. We were able to raise the red flags on Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert long before they arrived here, and now the rest of the world sort of waking up to this.
And Steve King before them.
That's true, right? Yeah,
it's all part of the same party.
True.
And you look at this and say, well, they didn't throw Steve King out. Why would they throw out these two? That's what they want.
Yes, I think they want that attention anyway, and
right. So Kevin McCarthy's
going
to have a
so
talk.
I can oblige.
He's going to have a stern talk with Marjorie Taylor Greene and say you can't go around threatening to put a bullet in Pelosi's head the way you did on Facebook. Right. And if you do that, you'll get a sternly worded letter, and then after that, I might not put you on some committees.
Yes. However, they did do that, and so he might take them off later. That would be the Steve King parallel. Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, serving together, very bad idea, on the House Budget Committee. So that'll be great. I assume they'll get their way on a lot of votes when they pull out the guns and threaten everybody. It's a good idea to put them in the same room.
The only advantage there, the only thing I guess you could say that's good about this is that the way the House works is that when you're in the minority, you can't do much of anything, thank goodness.
That is true, although usually you don't bring weapons. So we'll see whether that changes the equation at all. I think that they probably just won't. But
yeah, but they'll fight over it.
Yes.
And
they'll yell.
Who's that?
They'll circulate videos.
That fellow from Arizona, Andy Biggs,
yes.
who wasn't really on my radar. But he's just as much of a nutcase as any of the rest of them.
Yeah, so it would seem. And Andy Harris from Maryland has sort of turned into, he was always kind of kooky, but yeah, I think he's really learning by example from these other weirdos and also becoming a bit of a problem. But yeah, there are definitely some more. And of course, Madison Cawthorn should not be left out of this group either.
And Mo Brooks,
right.
But you got a bunch of.
Seems like there's
you can count them on the fingers of one hand, but they're like really bad, and they all ought to be thrown out.
Though. Yeah, I got to start getting ready for the second hand. Is really
right. You got a QAnon person, you got a truly gun nut person. Don't forget Lauren Boebert's business.
Yes,
is a restaurant where people pack. That's the whole idea.
Yes. Sometimes they pack
you have Mo Brooks, who's a treason and seditionist. You have Madison Cawthorn, who's a flat-out Nazi.
Yes.
I mean, these are really bad people. And I just didn't know Biggs. I knew Paul Gosar.
Yeah. Oh, right.
But I didn't know Biggs. And so you've got some really, really bad people who are representing their constituency who are perfectly happy with him the way the Iowa district was perfectly happy with Steve King. He's one of us, so we're not going to throw him out, So people have to, just internalize this, understand this.
Like it is.
And these are not the folks you're going to reconcile with and have unity. These are the folks you're going to say, that's very nice, we have to outvote you. Not maybe in your district, because that's not going to be available to us. But, Democrats versus Republicans, up or down votes in the House, yes, you lose.
They did eventually manage to get the Republicans to admit that Steve King needed to be marginalized. And
it takes a while, but the thing is, Steve King usually just did it quietly. Then he started saying stuff out loud. Yeah. And it's just another example of Kevin McCarthy not really having a lot of control over his own
he doesn't.
Committee. They're not a caucus, they're a committee.
Conference.
And so, conference. Yeah,
Cacophony.
Their conference. So their whole conference is like screwed, and they're going to have an internal fight over Liz Cheney.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how that's going to turn out, but I can tell you they won't emerge stronger from it. And, Liz Cheney has her own constituency. And so right now the Republican Party is divided between the Trumpists, who are in the majority, probably the same 55-45 as we saw in that vote, and the non-Trumpists who would like to get past this and move on and pretend none of this happened, which is the current party line. And, it's not going to end well for them because they're a divided party, and divided parties generally lose.
Yeah. Well, when?
Which is why Rob Portman retired.
Yes, that's true too, right? And I understand now a scramble on for who wants to jump into the race there in Ohio.
It'll be Jim Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, he seems ready to do it. It's a great opportunity to purge him from both houses of Congress, Ohio.
Yeah,
So
could happen. Happened to Mark Meadows.
Yeah.
Who now, by the way, can't find a job, so he's probably going to work for the Trump organization because nobody else will have him. Just to give you an idea how things are going.
Yeah, I have news. The Trump organization also might not hire him.
Yeah, well, that would be good.
That would be par for the course.
My pundit roundup today actually
maybe a campaign
had the headline, semi-normal week feels like a victory lap. Here's something interesting, which I was very happy about. Susan Ortega, you may not know her. She's a longtime public health advocate and high-ranking in the public health service, and she's going to be the acting Surgeon General while Vivek Murthy awaits confirmation. But the interesting thing about her is that she's a nurse. And she's one of the very first nurses to serve as nation's doctor.
Can you? Oh, I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't really know what the qualifications for Surgeon General were. But how about
that's
smart
like
about health?
To be speaker, right? You know.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Well, good. I mean, she knows damn
totally
lot more
qualified.
about healthcare than I do.
Think of her as a nurse practitioner, and there's no reason why she can't do it.
No. All right, then I'm for it. I will gladly take health advice from that person. What was her name again? Susan.
Her name is Susan Ortega.
I will have to learn that. Okay, Ortega. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. A nurse. I had no idea.
Her at the top of the pundit roundup.
I see her there. She looks very official.
Yeah.
I'm totally.
And she's got lots of medals.
Yeah, I see.
And, public health service is, has a military style, non-military. That is to say, the U.S. Public Health Service and the civilians who are in the U.S. Public Health Service. So when you go to CDC, some people are looking like what they look like Navy uniforms, and other people are not, depending upon what branch of the public health service they're in or not in. And she's official and looks like she's ready to roll over Yakutsk in a high stakes game of Risk.
She's from Central Casting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess.
So the New York Times has it this way, and I just love the framing of how they describe this. An impasse ends in the Senate as Democrats win a filibuster battle. Right? Instead of Democrats in disarray, they actually got the story right.
Cool.
But as in past fights over the filibuster, the outcome's likely to be only a temporary solution. As they press forward on Mr. Biden's agenda, Democrats will come under mounting pressure from activists to jettison the rule, which effectively requires 60 votes to advance any measure, should Republicans use it regularly to stall or stop the administration's priorities.
Yes.
So, again, this is a little bit of a philosophical rant here, but, you step back and you look at the Twitter feed and such, it's amazing how many people who count themselves as Democrats and progressives on the drop of a hat will be ready to blast Pelosi and Schumer for doing everything wrong.
Sure.
As if, this is like, you should have gone for that play on fourth down. It's easy being a sideline quarterback on this. But getting your conference or your caucus
for us,
in terms of the Democrats, conference for the Republicans, in line when you have close splits in the House or Senate is a difficult job at best. And, in the end, what do we have here? We have Pelosi being excoriated for how she handled impeachment, and yet Trump is impeached twice. You have excoriations about how Chuck Schumer always gets rolled and Lucy in the football on the filibuster by McConnell, and the Times reporting an impasse ends in the Senate as Democrats win a filibuster battle. The fact of the matter is that eventually McConnell is going to have to concede. Everybody knows that. Schumer didn't give him anything. The only thing that happened that made McConnell give up was that the usual suspects.
Well, he read the newspaper.
Joe Manchin in West Virginia and Sinema in Arizona said, I really prefer not to get rid of the filibuster. And McConnell said, okay, that's good enough for me. Sounds like a promise. Okay, you win.
I mean, it's what it comes down to. I mean, there's a sense in which he can declare a sort of victory. But, I mean, all he did was read the newspaper and find out what we knew. I mean, if he had asked us,
didn't commit to anything they hadn't already committed to.
Right.
Sure, they'd prefer not to, but they didn't promise to never do it. McConnell said, okay, good enough. And now we go ahead and we have the organizing resolution.
Yeah.
And we don't have to have the battle of whether that can or cannot be filibustered. The fact is that the Democrats are in charge and they're going to be setting the agenda. Yeah. And what's that agenda? One of the very first things that comes up is going to be a Voting Rights Act bill.
Hey, all right.
And so that's going to push Sinema and Manchin to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to allow the Republicans to block that.
Yes.
Or do you get rid of the filibuster? It's going to come up right away. And then you have the COVID-19 relief bill. I mean, you've got a bunch of stuff that's actually happening relatively quickly that's going to, bring this up, and then we'll see where these folks really stand. And that, it doesn't look like a loss to me from where I'm sitting right now. Maybe it'll turn out that way and it'll be a bruising battle that we didn't get what we wanted. But it's not a Lucy and the football, oh my gosh, you got rolled again. In fact, they positioned themselves well downfield so that they can go ahead and take advantage of what happens next with no guarantees. If you want to continue the sports analogy.
Yes, like a what do they call it? Like a good punt to the corner. And so you pin the other team back deep in their own territory and play it out. Can't score a touchdown right now.
Yes, you have to play it out. But, they're not in bad position. They didn't get embarrassed. In fact, they set themselves up fairly well. They're still in a position to get rid of the filibuster if they feel like they need to.
Yes.
They didn't commit not to.
Really. Certainly true. And quite honestly, had they committed not to, they still could have if they changed their mind later. So there wasn't really a whole lot that McConnell could have wrung out of them. And right. I think even before this started, in December, if you had said, we're going to win the 2 seats in Georgia. We did say that, but we were just kidding ourselves with our confidence at the time. But, we had high hopes, certainly. But if you had granted that we would have won.
It was a close race and we could win.
That is true.
All we were doing is pointing that out. It wasn't a lost race like Kentucky Senator against McConnell.
Yeah. But having pointed that out and saying, all right, now assuming a 50-50 Senate, will Democrats immediately be able to get rid of the filibuster? Anybody listening to the show, for sure. And you didn't even have to listen to the show to know this and say, no, probably not. Why not? Give me one reason why not. They all would have said Manchin. Probably about 70% would have said Sinema. Yeah. Some people might have been surprised or have learned about Sinema's opposition just recently, but I don't think anybody would have been surprised. But the answer would have been no, and you would have been right. And if you had said Manchin, you would have gotten the extra bonus points, and everybody knew that. And so Mitch McConnell made a big fuss, and then at the end of the big fuss, he found out what everybody already knew. That's the big concession. Wow, did Chuck ever get rolled?
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, the philosophical reason I say philosophical is that Democrats are so used to getting traumatized by Lucy and the football that when you actually have something that's more like a win, you're not ready for it. And so naturally you have to excoriate Schumer for not doing it right.
Yes, and Lucy. What are you doing, Lucy?
And Lucy. What are you doing, Lucy? Well, you expect it from Lucy.
Yes.
I know. But why you Charlie Brown again?
That's
Chuck Schumer. Well, actually, this time I was not.
Yeah,
I was more like, Schroeder at the keyboard here, and I can maneuver around you. So here's a piece by Jesse Jackson and David Daley, who wrote a book about this stuff. Democrats have a chance to finally win the fight for voting rights that started in 1965. To give you an idea of the epic battle over white supremacy here, this goes back so many years, and the idea that you were just going to get rid of it with an organizing resolution, I mean, this is really what this is about. I saw on Twitter somebody trying to label it as you have to get rid of the Jim Crow filibuster.
Yeah.
And that's not totally wrong.
No.
And that's the way you have to look at it. And if you label it that and you consider this as part of that fight that started in 1965, it gives Manchin and Sinema a little more cover to do what they need to do.
Yes, that's true, and the history is, it's correct there. And the battle to change the filibuster began in earnest right around the same time. Actually, a little bit earlier, I suppose, but again, was always a progressive fight and always tied to civil rights for the first 20 years of the battle. So it's been a long time coming. But
so long that you have to remind people of some of the history, not you, but folks, in general. And so, it's important to see it that way. And if you do, then you realize that, okay, it's not exactly something you can compromise on if, in fact, you really believe in civil rights and, one person, one vote sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's like bedrock, democratic principle here. And it's not something you can easily give up on.
Well, okay. Let's make it difficult.
Right. So, and then you have the COVID thing. And by the way, the COVID thing is still going on. And yeah, that's important. And sure, as soon as Biden starts to present it, the Republicans are going to say, well, it's way too expensive because we can only do expensive things when there's a Republican in power. But if it's a Democrat in power, our biggest fear is that what you suggest might work. And we can't have that because then you'll associate working and succeeding with Democrats. And that is what we're opposed to.
Yes.
So McConnell responds by warning of scorched earth Senate if Democrats actually go ahead and kill the filibuster.
Okay.
And as I pointed out in the Pundit Roundup when I posted that story, Merrick Garland could not be reached for comment at this particular point in time. So what McConnell's going to do that's more scorched earth than he's already scorched earth is tough to figure, especially in the minority.
Yeah, it is. There's certainly plenty that can be done. And by the way, nothing that we didn't advise Democrats to do at the beginning of the Trump administration, and they didn't do it. So when McConnell says, you'll see an unprecedented level of resistance, that is true. It is unprecedented. No one has ever done it before. As much as we urged Democrats to do it, and Democrats, I guess, pondered doing it at the beginning of the Trump administration with his nominations for his cabinet, etc. It never has been done. Everybody else has found a way to work within the system. But the party that just launched an armed insurrection against Congress is ready to do things differently than ever before. So
well, me, the non-expert, is, okay, you do that, we'll change the rules again.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what it comes down to. So we'll just have to find the breaking point for the two holdouts who haven't promised anything. I guess that's easier than if they had. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, I think we've recapped things nicely here, though there were some comments that we exchanged in the break that probably ought to be broadcast here. Definitely lots of vitriol from McConnell, as you pointed out, and bitter vitriol at that about his threats to blow up the Senate, which, not very funny given that somebody brought bombs to the Senate a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, he's threatening that things are going to get really bad. There was just an armed insurrection.
Yeah, it doesn't get much worse.
It doesn't get much worse than that you guys actually egged on. So what are you talking about? And you lost.
Yeah. And then they had you said you were going to hold Trump accountable for it, and you voted yesterday not to. So that was a little weird also. But,
except for five of you.
Right. But McConnell didn't. McConnell, who's been, people have been, wondering, maybe he would vote for conviction. After all, he sounds pretty pissed. He voted along with, he might still.
And Rob Portman might. But again, getting back to what we talked about Monday and the earlier part of the show, the problem is the Republican constituency, and these so-called leaders cannot bring their party with them. It's the other way around.
Yes.
This is a parade that they're running in front of to say that they're leading. And so there's no way he's going to wind up getting convicted. And even if you vote your conscience, which is a good way of saying you're going to lose, and that was he's not whipping anybody. In other words, he's not trying to get a vote.
I see. Yes.
Because you can't. Because, everybody who you would try to convince to vote against Trump is going to wind up being primaried. And so they're not going to do it because that's their main job, is to get reelected. And again, I say that not cynically, but practically. And, people have to understand that that is their main job. And then after that, it's raising money for re-election. And then after that, if they have time, they'll get to some, legislation. But that's not their main priority.
Yeah.
And so, McConnell can't bring them along. And so there may be some votes against Trump, but not enough. And yet that's not really all that's going on. And in the meantime, as McConnell sounds like a loser, as he complains bitterly about what the Democrats might do next, it's because he knows what the Democrats might do next. Here's a story on the first 100 days in the Washington Post. Democrats turned to quick action on Biden COVID relief bill after power sharing deal in Senate. Schumer informed Senate Democrats they should be prepared to take initial vote as soon as next week. Now, what does this headline tell us? First of all, yes, that power sharing deal opens up the floodgates for doing stuff. Democrats were waiting for that to happen before they went into action. And the fact that either the COVID relief bill or a Voting Rights Act style bill, which is also going to come soon, can force the issue of what to do about the filibuster is very much in McConnell's mind as he starts to answer, what does it mean that I accepted Sinema and Manchin's guarantees that weren't guarantees? That's why he's reacting the way he is. He knows, what's going to happen next.
Okay. Well, yeah, he probably has a pretty good idea of what's going to happen next. He's
better than most, I would say.
The same things when he was in the minority before, or had the same things done to him when in the majority by Democrats. And so it's a pretty well-defined playbook. But
right. Now, the other thing that's, kind of interesting to me, and you have way more insight into this than I do because you were there, and that is the different dynamics between the House and the Senate. They don't exactly run the same way.
Right.
The House is totally majoritarian, and the Senate not quite as much. But McConnell's really trying to force the issue to turn the Senate into the House and make it majoritarian because of, recalcitrance and resistance, which I don't know in the long term is really a smart idea for somebody who considers themselves an institutionalist.
Yes. Well,
but if you give them no choice in terms of getting stuff done, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then he'll retire and he won't care anymore.
But, it won't be my problem.
Yeah, I guess so. Mr. Institutionalist who's threatening to burn the place down and not hold anyone accountable for actually trying to burn the place down. It was a big day for his institutionalism yesterday. Not really.
That's what I'm saying,
Okay.
And so when you look at this power sharing agreement, as my grandmother always used to say, it could always be worse for Chuck,
Yep. Well, yes, true. This is about what you'd expect out of a 50-50, for sure.
Not bad,
Yeah.
So,
again,
that doesn't mean you shouldn't pick on Schumer and Pelosi or yell at them or push them or put pressure on them or however you want to do it. Just don't make it personal. This is politics, this is procedure, and it's not that they're stupid, and it's not that they don't understand, and it's not that it's so easy. Give your opinion, let them know what you want them to do. It's important. I'm of the old FDR school. I agree with you. Now make me do it. That's fine. But saying, well, anybody else would have done so much better, and Pelosi's too old, and you have to replace her because reasons. And we tried that, and there wasn't anybody else, and she actually did a pretty good job. But I still have my position that she should be replaced because reasons. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's be practical about this. Same with Schumer. Who's going to replace Schumer? Who should?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's a little easier to imagine, I think, successors in the Senate right now than it is in the House. But eventually, the answer will come. I mean, they don't live forever. They don't serve forever. And very frequently, the person you choose doesn't appear to be the perfect answer at the outset. And then in 3, 4, 5 years down the road, the question becomes, well, who could possibly replace this person? So you just get used to these things. But yeah, generally speaking, people forget that the House and Senate Democratic caucuses are constituencies themselves, and that the leaders become and stay leader by taking the pulse of their caucus and speaking to the members and finding out how far they're willing to go and not getting too far out in front of them. And
right,
it's
and
not a
that's
matter
exactly
of
what's
just
happened to
ordering
McConnell.
people to
If
do
I'm
this.
not mistaken, it was Ron Johnson, but it could have been any of them who said something along the lines of, or maybe it was one of those anonymous things, McConnell can't force us to vote against Trump. If he does, he won't be leader.
Yeah. That was basically it. And, it's a little more complicated than just declaring him not to be the leader. But in small ways, you can undermine his leadership or go around him. And
it's not like people like him.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It's not like
they
you vote
sometimes
for leader.
appreciate his taking heat for them, but that's not the same thing as liking him. Definitely true.
Yeah. It's not like Ted Cruz, Rand Paul level of not liking, but, he's not a popular leader. He's a, consensus, this seems like the best way to get stuff done leader.
Trump
and if you don't
attacked
get
him
stuff
viciously
done,
at the outset. Yeah.
you're gone. Bye.
Yeah, there was a long time, right at the beginning of the Trump presidency, if you still want to call it that McConnell was teetering on the edge. He was viciously attacking McConnell and saying he ought to be replaced, and people were casting around, shall we do it? Who can we get? And then, of course, when they realized whoever it is also going to have to be the person that takes the heat for blocking votes or forcing uncomfortable votes or whatever it is, and hey, no one wanted to do that. That was weird.
That's right.
So let's just
you have to do everything that McConnell did, only better. Who is it?
Yeah.
Who would jump up and do that?
Right.
Same thing happened when, not this time, but the last time, when there was perhaps a more serious challenge to Pelosi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Except it really wasn't a serious challenge because, who else is going to do it?
Yeah, you have to be able to, withstand that kind of onslaught, not only national press, but to be able to go home and face constituents and still be pretty sure that you're going to be returned to office, despite the fact that you're the focal point for all the anger from the other side and even now internally. And not a whole lot of people are ready to step up and into that.
Mm. So let me finish my segment for today with sort of an interesting feel-good story. This is by Aswin Subsang in Daily Beast, who has the title, Trump Fumes in His First Weekend Out of Office as Fauci Clowns on Him.
Okay, I'm worried about Trump fumes. But yes,
in recent days, former President Donald Trump is watched from afar as one of his most popular rivals for public attention has been unleashed by the Biden administration to in part disparage Trump's handling of the COVID pandemic, and the ex-president hasn't even been able to tweet about it. Fauci, once a prominent figure on Trump's coronavirus task force, who's now a top COVID-19 advisor to President Joe Biden, began his multi-day blitz to different news outlets, which included openly expressing his relief that the old crew was gone and he could now serve in the Biden administration. One of the new things in this administration is if you don't know the answer, don't guess, just say you don't know the answer. Fauci told reporters at the White House on Tuesday. Here's another Fauciism out because he said this directly to me. Yes.
All right.
If you're discussing things with the press and they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, your response should be, Fauci said to me, I don't know, but here's what we do know.
Okay.
Which was a very good piece of advice, and I've tried to do that when we talk about stuff.
All right.
So he's good at this.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why he's making the rounds. And, of course, the thing I love about him is was one of the very few people in the administration and on TV who actually doesn't have an accent. So it's really nice.
Yes, people enjoy that. But, yeah, you should absolutely, in addition to all the fantastic science that he brings to the discussion, really an interesting – this will be great for political scientists in the future. Who's the only figure to be able to serve with distinction in both the Trump and Biden administration, and how did that happen?
Right, exactly. Somebody who couldn't do that was Deborah Birx, who's doing her, rehab tour.
Yes.
And has hit the Sunday show saying, I was muzzled. I wasn't allowed to say what I wanted to say. Well, why don't you just say what you wanted to say? Fauci did.
Yeah, and he's still there.
Well, he had a different job. He was protected. He was a public service person that doesn't work directly for the president. Okay, well, go ahead and resign and make a big stink about it. You sat there and nodded your head when he said bleach.
Yeah. Didn't really have to do it that way.
So you are not one of the people who wound up serving with distinction in both administrations.
Yeah. The formula was simple. He told you what it was. He actually told you personally what it was, and then executed it right in front of your very eyes. And wow, really nobody survived. We know the saying, everything Trump touches dies. Well,
Right.
I don't know. Maybe he didn't touch
So,
it.
so back to this article. On top of everything else that was stripped from him, he's lost his primary emotional release valve thanks to his post-Capitol riot banning from Twitter.
Yes.
Just as his enemies, real and perceived, keep dancing atop his administration's freshly dug grave. Oh, I love that reference, and I just keep thinking of Tombstone and Val Kilmer.
I have to go to the bathroom.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just stepped over your grave.
Right, and then painted you orange on top of it.
And it's not just Fauci. Trump has also griped this weekend about not being able to tweet about the Biden team, telling journalists that Trump and ex-officials had left him with a gigantic COVID mess to mop up, according to a person with direct knowledge of his recent ramblings. He very much feels that a lot of people are working to downgrade his legacy out of hatred for him. Actually, they're working to tell the truth about his legacy now that you're not there to lie about it like every moment.
Right. Though I am willing to do the former.
But it looks like it's dancing on your grave because that's what happens when you actually tell the truth.
Yeah. I love this picture of him in this article, too.
Right.
Pointing out the window of his limo.
So many experts and former Trump administration officials feared that an official policy of herd immunity would get a staggering amount of Americans killed in the process, and Trump had to be walked back from the edge of endorsing it multiple times. That's because he had Scott Atlas as an advisor.
I forgot.
And why that guy hasn't been banned from polite society, I don't know. Same thing with Stephen Miller and a lot of the other people. Now, it's true that a lot of folks in the Trump administration who left at the end cannot find jobs now. There's stories about that, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But it's simply not credible that Trump would take any sort of victory lap for what happened when you have so many people who died and the politics of COVID was set back by not wanting to admit that it was a problem because it would make him look bad. And that really was the whole reason why we're in this mess right now. And that's why you scratch your head and look at the Republican Party and say, what is wrong with them? They think that that's a legacy that is worth defending and worth continuing to try to do.
I have no explanation for it.
You look at that exactly. Your mouth drops and say, "What are you doing?" You're trying to be the Arizona Republican Party. You have really hot public relations pieces that go to everybody's email box, but you can't win elections.
Yeah, or worse, the Hawaii Republican Party, which really can't win elections.
Which really can't win elections. And if you want to turn every state into Virginia. Remember that Makaka guy used to be a senator there, and then Virginia changed. You're an expert in Virginia politics.
I live there. That's all. I hardly know what's going on, but I get a say in it.
You know as much about Virginia as I do about Connecticut for the same reason. I live here, but that doesn't make me an expert in Connecticut politics, and I hardly ever talk about it because who the hell knows? I don't.
There are legit experts.
I'm looking at the national stuff here, but I will tell you that having lived here. The Lyndon McMahon branch of the Republican Party really hasn't changed all that much, but they can't win elections.
Yeah, okay. We all have that somewhere in our states. It's odd how much attention they're getting, and I don't know. What can I tell you? I guess they all feel like they won.
Says, wait a minute, I used to get all the attention, and now nobody's paying attention to me because you got 49 other people saying the same thing. I said it first.
Well, that's one of the downsides of adopting the campaign in a box is other people can get that box. So you're not going to have the franchise on that for very long. And eventually somebody's going to say, I can say it even worse than that guy. And then you're not so popular anymore. You get primaried from the right and say, I don't understand. The box said to say this. Well, that guy made it even worse. He had a little chili pepper to the box there, right? I'm thinking about all these meal kit services now. I'm not talking about you guys. It's different.
Yeah. I mean, there's not anything in the box like the other, but it's a bigger box. So, people think it looks better, and so they're going to buy that, and I can charge more money for an empty box.
Right. Or the meal comes in a box. I added garlic. Mine tastes better. So,
yes.
Okay.
Dehydrated water. Just add water. It's a great seller.
Well, it's a popular item, easy to cook,
especially in the desert. So anyway, that's a story, and we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see what else happens. But the world is turning to regular politics, trying to figure out what passes and what doesn't pass, The insider reporters who are appropriately jaded will tell you nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to work. This is the same old, and none of that's true. They don't know any more than you do.
Ooh, yeah.
And that's been exposed over the last 4 years. But they'll snap back to their old habits, and they'll talk about Joe Biden's Rolex, which, by the way, was a piece of memorabilia from his son, Beau Biden, which is why he wears it.
That might be the
and
case.
so the New York Times piece pointing out he's not a regular Joe because he wears a Rolex. Well, it turns out there's a reason why he does, and yeah, he is a regular Joe.
Dang. Well, that seems to have backfired. Although I will point out that they did put that in the style section or whatever. They didn't mean for that to be a serious political coverage piece, but he's the president, so I think. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I had a feeling it might be something quite like that, too. Honestly, I guess you just have to pick a more regular Joe kind of a piece of memorabilia like Jim Webb and his son's boots. Nobody ever thought that was highfalutin.
Right. And then I'll end with this little tweet here. David Baynod had a piece saying, "What a guy. Prosecutors say Guy Reffitt of Texas stormed the Capitol and then threatened his children. If you turn me in, you're a traitor, and you know what happens to traitors. Traitors get shot."
Right.
He said he'd do what he has to do and put a bullet through his daughter's phone. That's the tweet. And Tom Nichols, Radio Free Tom, Never Trumper, conservative, retweeted it and said, "Economic anxiety."
Yeah, how am I ever going to afford to replace the phone after I put a bullet through it? And gosh, how much was the bullet? That's why he didn't do it. He's economically
And this
anxious.
little tidbit from Jennifer Jacobs, this is all in the Pundit Roundup. GOP operatives saying they believe Republican U.S. Senator Rob Portman's decision not to seek re-election in 2020 signals he doesn't think the party's coming back anytime soon into a working majority.
Not that he's going to do anything about it, but he is going to leave.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
and
I guess so.
my Twitter friend Drew Savicki, the politics Twitter guy, says, "I'm waiting on the if Biden wants unity, he should switch parties think piece."
Oh.
And I thought, if Biden really wants unity, what he should do is offer Trump every other year president.
That's
he should just switch off.
Sure.
I mean, that's real unity. What's wrong with you? You don't
absolutely.
really want unity. You keep trying to pass things like the Voting Rights Act. You don't want unity at all, do you? And again, a reminder to our listeners, when they say unity, they mean white supremacist unity.
I guess
All you white people should unite behind us and do what we want. We lost, so you should pick up our agenda. That's what unity means. And the Democratic answer to that is, nah, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I guess so. Would it be unity if he if he nationalized Trump National Golf Course and started playing golf there every weekend? Would that be
And
unity?
paid a fee to go. That'd be nice. All right. And morning console poll that's out. Joe Biden begins his presidency with an approval rating of 56-34, which is just notable because it's a higher job approval than Donald Trump ever held. Ever.
Yes, right. I mean, for anything, even the day he was elected.
Right. Biden starts with a positive net approval across all genders, ages, and race. The only people that don't like him are rural voters. Steve King's people.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, there's a lot less of them. That's a problem for them in the whole voting.
Well, there's a lot of work to do there. And
cows
so the
like
answer to
them.
that is, do policies that do good. Do well by doing good. And, just make it work. And that's the way you convince people over time. It's going to take time because
Some of
you're in
them
a
you
deep
can't
hole to begin
please.
with there.
Yeah, there's no pleasing a couple of them. Oh, before you go, I'll make you aware of this. Just saw it from Armando, actually, verifying the issue. Since we've been talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and who she is and the kind of person that she is, I see Armando saying, "Oh my gosh, this is true." This is a Fred Gutenberg tweet. Fred Gutenberg, of course, one of the parents of the kids killed in the
Florida.
Parkland shooting. Yes. And you may recall, it's been a while since we've heard directly from some of them, but you may remember that right after the shooting, some of the survivor kids from the school became enormous advocates, very effective advocates
absolutely.
on the gun issues and something of, a political celebrity.
Camp
there were a couple
Caskey
of
and
them.
other folks.
And David, is it Hogue? I don't know how he pronounces his last name, but I think so. But David Hogue among them. And, of course, they also became the targets for a lot of deplorable Republican vitriol, and people were horrible to them, including, of course, pretending the shooting was either a hoax or a false flag operation, and they found out
Marjorie
about their...
Taylor Greene was a Sandy Hook truther
Yes,
as well.
she was, and that's being exposed in the last couple of, nationally exposed anyway, on the last couple of days in search through her Facebook profile. But also recently discovered and now circulated by David Hogue and Fred Gutenberg, a video of David making a visit to the Capitol to lobby on gun issues and being followed and videotaped and shouted at and harassed by some mysterious person who has placed themselves outside the Capitol to yell at him about how it was all a hoax and a false flag. And you'll never guess who it is on camera, just following 10 feet behind him, yelling stupid, baseless nonsense and questions at him in order to prove it. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Huh.
Amazing. This is a very, very, very dangerous person, and they have put a member's pin on her, and now are having to sit by while she carries her gun onto the floor after spending the time in between this crazy video and now posting on Facebook about how the real solution was to put a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head. Here she is, and but they're going to have a stern talking with her, like you said.
Yeah.
They'll sit
Okay.
down
Good.
and chat with her.
Well, I wasn't going to do this, but given that you just read that, I am going to forward this to you. This is the last piece I had in the pundit roundup. It's called "My Fascism Problem and Yours" by John Gantz, who has an essay about fascist structure of Trumpism. Its mythic core. It's why hardcore self-conscious fascists like neo-Nazis and alt-right groups welcome the emergence of Trump. They know this was their kind of politics, even if they know Trump was not an ideologically self-conscious fascist in the way they might like. But they felt with Trump a certain kind of political practice had arrived. And, he's dangerous because he's unleashed stuff that's far more radical than he is. And he was just trying to ride the wave. And you know what happens when you ride the tiger.
Yes.
Half the time you wind up in the tiger's belly.
Right. Well, yeah. And the other times it's not so good either, quite honestly. No matter where you end up. Wherever you go, you get mauled. Sometimes
and there you go. I was just going to end at 9:35, but then we started talking, and here it is, almost the end of the hour. Which is probably what you wanted,
show.
but
What'd you miss out on? I'd like to know what I'm depriving you of, so that I
nothing.
can be more conscientious.
I like talking
about
with
this.
you. That's how come I come on the show all this time.
Excellent.
That's the only reason I do it. It isn't because of the salary you pay me.
Well, that's true. We should maybe we can change that with gigantic corporate sponsorships of some sort.
Yes. You can raise me from 0 to 0, and that would be fun. I'd still come on the show because I just like talking with you.
Hey.
And learning things. I might add that turned out to be useful 6 years later.
Oh, right. Well, this is time-released formula. It's all right. If it works, it's still valid. And the economics, you can't argue with them. So, all right. I appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around, and I got to share this extra bit with you. I guess I'll see about looking at this video. Perhaps we can spend part of the next hour discussing it and rolling the sound on and see just how crazy is she, although I have no idea what she's going to yell out. So,
right, and then if it really bothers you, you have this Trumpism, fascism thing.
Got it.
Wish. All right, take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, yes, it's a long time till tomorrow, but we'll wait for it. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in what might be in this. I think I can open this up on... the big show running computer. I don't know. Is it unwise though? I mean, it's like a 2-minute video, and I don't think we're going to have any copyright issues here because I don't know. Although I don't know who owns the video, but we'll risk it. But it's exactly. You've seen this sort of thing 100 times, and I'll put it in the roundup. And I did circulate it. I retweeted it just recently. So what I have here is I got Armando's comment on Fred Gutenberg's piece, and I think David Hogue also, he must have sent it around, and Fred picked up on it this way, and he comments, hey, to her Twitter account, MT Green, although I think he got there's an extra E on the end here, and I don't think that's correct. But anyway, is this you harassing David Hogue weeks after the Parkland shooting that my daughter was killed in and he was in, calling him a coward for ignoring your insanity? I will answer all your questions in person. Get ready to record again. So I guess that tells you what sort of shenanigans are going on in this video here. Let's roll a little bit of it.
David, why are you supporting the red flag laws? If Scott Peterson, the resource officer at Parkland, had done his job, then Nicholas Cruz wouldn't have killed anybody in your high school, or at least...
Are you able to hear this? The volume isn't very high, although I can make out exactly what she's saying. Let me see about over on the controls here, whether I can raise the volume on this stuff so that you can hear it. But I mean, keep in mind, I mean, you can't say that they're not absolutely insane questions, I guess, but you can see that they're designed to elicit, irritation more than anything else. But I guess my big question here is, who the F is this person that's following me and doing this, right? At this point, Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, you know who David Hogue is at this point. He's the victim of a horrible school shooting who's coming to advocate that for laws that might possibly help prevent something like this from happening again, or at least make them less frequent. And this is by all reports, I guess we're running out of time before the break here, but maybe we'll do it afterwards. Or maybe I can preview a little bit. Only have the 1 minute break. Anyway, this is, at this point, a QAnon believing CrossFit gym owner from Georgia has come to Washington, D.C. to harass a teenager from Florida who's just survived a school shooting. And that's all there is to it. Why aren't you answering my questions? Why are you asking me questions? You're, nobody I need to talk to. I mean, you're just a citizen like I am, I guess. And in that respect, I could stop and have a conversation with you. But one, I'm on my way somewhere important. And two, I can hear what you're asking me. They're idiotic, harassing questions. Why are you supporting red flag laws? Because they're a damn good idea. That's why. Do you know if the safety officer had done his job? No one went, yeah, I know. Why don't we make his job a hell of a lot easier so that more people like him could do it better? I don't know. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just a 1 minute break here. Didn't have real time to preview the thing. The tape is twice as long, but I think I can boost the signal a little bit. Greg says he could hear it, but it sounded a little faint, so we'll just roll it over again. Again, the scene is David Hogue is walking to the Capitol to, visit with some legislators and I guess lobby in support of some effort to try and say, cut down on the number of people who are able to, in many cases kids, who are able to get hold of guns without anybody putting a check or roadblock of any kind in the way, and show up at school and take out their grievances by shooting everybody. And Marjorie Taylor Greene would like to know, why in the hell does he want to do that? And she's obviously nuts. And now that she is in Congress, by the way, she did make her promise to file articles of impeachment against Joe Biden because she's mad about the articles of impeachment about Donald Trump. And by the way, remember, every time that Republicans criticize a Democrat filing articles of impeachment, whether it was against George W. Bush or now against Donald Trump, the accusation is always, so this is just partisan tit for tat. And we always dispute that because there are usually good grounds for filing those articles of impeachment. But the problem, as they see it, is that Democrats are always engaging in partisan tit for tat. But of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene filing articles of impeachment against Joe Biden the day he takes office, that's just good, solid American patriotism. Anyway, I went looking to see whether she actually filed those articles because she's not terribly smart. I'm not 100% certain that just by her saying that she was going to do it meant she was going to do it. And for a while, there were other journalists trying to find this thing, or there were journalists trying to find it. And then there was also me. Again, I just don't consider myself in the same class as those guys do real research. I look things up. That's really all I'm doing. Anyway, they were concluding that she was lying about having filed those articles of impeachment because they couldn't find them in Congress.gov. But having looked several times through Congress.gov and knowing how they work, I realized you aren't going to find it the day it's filed. It's going to take them a day to even enter into a shell entry into the system. And then it'll still be a couple of days before they actually get the text entered into the system. She did file them. I didn't really think that she wouldn't be able to figure it out, although there was an article immediately afterwards saying that she didn't file them as quickly as she thought she would, because as it turns out, it's actually a hard thing to do. And it was harder than I thought it was going to be to enter a bill. And that's because you don't know how anything works. But hardly anybody does when they first arrive there, although they do have an orientation for you. So they teach you how to do it. Not that one lesson is necessarily going to make it clear for everybody, but for regular people of normal intelligence, it's not that difficult, or at least they teach you who to ask for help. And she wasn't paying attention, though. That's the thing. She wasn't paying attention during the orientation. The only thing she was paying attention to was the layout, the physical layout of the place, so that she could give tours to people later on, so that they could come and attack the Capitol and undermine our democracy and threaten to assassinate the top leadership in America, minus Donald Trump, and install him as king forever. You get the idea. Anyway, so here she is in her prior life. Reminder, Greg has sent me a couple of other links here about what they're finding. Is it over at the Andrew Kaczynski's feed? He, of course, now working over at CNN and running the K-Files, digging through people's backgrounds and Facebook postings and other public records about them to try and figure out what we all need to know about them and should have known about them a long time ago, but when she was just an obscure candidate running in an obscure backwater congressional district. It's still a congressional district. You still get to come here and be a nuisance. We should have paid attention. What was she doing in her former life? She now, by the way, offers the excuse of, well, I was a private person at the time, or it was long ago, it was before I was in public life, and so therefore it didn't count. But these are Facebook postings. They can't be that old, period. But as it happens, they're also not old as Facebook postings go. This is from 2018 and 2019 when she's posting somebody should shoot Nancy Pelosi, that the various school shootings are hoaxes and false flags, etc., etc. And her comments, as it turns out, about David Hogue at the time, and we'll see whether they appear in any of this video, but the Facebook comments, the printed comments, apparently include such gems as that David Hogue is a hashtag little Hitler, and spreading the conspiracy that he was a bought and paid little pawn and a crisis actor and the whole thing. So you get the idea of where she's coming from. So, okay, we've boosted the audio on this. We'll see if it makes any difference or it needs any further boosting. Let's hear a little bit more.
Yeah. David, why are you supporting the red flag laws?
Clearly, by the way, this is her walking. She's not taking the video, though, so she's got someone with her. And an accomplice here. Take video of me asking stupid questions or harassing questions of David Hogue. Why are you supporting red flag laws? Because less people will get shot that way.
If Scott Peterson, the resource officer at Parkland, had done his job, then Nicholas Cruz wouldn't have killed anybody in your high school, or at least protected them. Why are you supporting red flag gun laws that attack our Second Amendment rights? And why are you using kids as a barrier?
He is a kid.
Do you not know how to defend your stance? Look, I'm an American citizen. I'm a gun owner. I have a concealed carry permit. I carry a gun for protection for myself, and you are using... Yeah, just by the way, I just want to talk to you, but you're the victim of a mass shooting, and I just wanted to let you know that I have a gun with me right now, and you better answer my questions. Your lobby and the money behind it and the kids to try to take away my Second Amendment rights. You don't have anything to say for yourself? You can't defend your stance? How did you get over 30 appointments with senators? How'd you do that?
I don't know. How did you end up in Congress? You just organize yourself and go do it. I guess you answered that question for yourself later, but okay.
How did you get major press coverage on this issue?
It was a big
how did
news
you get
article.
Kids? Why do you use kids? Why kids? You know, if school zones were protected why with security guards with guns, there would be no mass shootings at schools.
Now, of course, she just noticed. I mean, I don't know why I'm bothering to dissect her position on this, but if the school resource officer at your school had done his job, no one would have gotten shot. And as a matter of fact, you don't need to do anything about this, because all we need to do to protect kids from getting shot in school shootings is to put a school resource officer armed with a gun at these schools. Everybody knows a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun, and that's the only way to do it. Never mind the fact that I just said that the good guy with the gun at your school didn't stop the shooting, but he would if we had put him there pursuant to my direction. And again, remember, she's literally nobody in this setting. I mean, she's a gun owner and that's it. And, a gym owner, I guess, in Georgia somewhere, and she just positioned herself in between, I guess, Union Station. It looks like maybe he came in on a train and is walking over to the Senate side of the Capitol. And how did you get appointments with 30 senators? I called and I asked if I could meet with them, and they said yes. And in most cases, it's 2 seconds with the senator and maybe 15 minutes with a staffer. It's really not hard to get. But then again, this is the woman who, upon election to Congress, actually making it all the way to the Congress, is still like, how do I do a bill again? Yeah, so not really prepared for any of what she's doing. There's still more. That's only about half of it. Are you still interested? Let's see if there's anything worse.
You know that? The best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun.
It didn't work.
But you're attacking our Second Amendment. And you have nothing to say. No words. So I'm walking. He's got nothing to say. Sad. He has nothing to say because there really isn't anything to say, you guys. Yeah, you guys, there really is nothing to say. So I'm going to say the same nothing over and over again. There's my Second Amendment. You're trying to take away my Second Amendment rights. Why are you walking? What a genius. He has
I mean, is there
nothing
more?
to say because he's paid to do this. He
Uh-huh.
has the walkaway march.
What are you doing
He's got
there?
He's got the women's march, and they're funding all of this. Everytown Gun USA, they're funding all this stuff, okay?
They're funding it. They're funding all this stuff, okay? I am a gym owner. I own a CrossFit gym in Georgia, and that's it. And I'm here in Washington, D.C., videotaping myself walking behind one of the kids and harassing him. And I've got an assistant filming for me, and nobody has explained that either. Although I do understand that she's, not fabulously wealthy, but I guess she's done pretty well for herself, and that's how she set herself up in Congress in the first place, moving into a district that she didn't live in and self-funding this lunatic fringe challenge. But I don't necessarily know that she's getting funded from the outside anywhere in order to do this, but it's amazing how nobody else could possibly be there on their own dime. I'm the only patriot worthy of being here to do what? Not to lobby Congress. By all accounts, she's not even there to talk to gun rights supporting lunatic members of Congress to lobby against whatever he's lobbying for. Her job is simply to harass people on their way into the building. It's really weird. There's a little more. Anything worse than
That was
this?
David Hogue right there. David, we saw him inside the Senate building.
Wow, did
he
you?
Had 30 appointments where he went around and got to talk to senators. I got to talk to none.
Did you
He had
call?
media coverage all over the place. I had zero.
You're on camera right now, dumbass.
Guess what? I'm a gun owner.
Yeah,
I'm
guess
an
what?
American citizen.
American?
And I have nothing but this guy with his George Soros funding and his major liberal funding.
Yeah.
He's got everything.
Right. He's
I want you to
very
think
rich.
about that. That's where we are. And he's a coward. He can't say one word because he can't defend his stand.
He doesn't have to. It's not, who are you? What's the point of he's going to talk to 30 senators. I guess if you had that going on in your life, and by the way, even now as a congresswoman, I bet you still can't get an appointment with 30 senators because you just don't know any and they're not interested in talking to you. Anyway, somewhat interesting. There's no real point in staying around and critiquing it so much. It's just kind of annoying, and I guess I enjoy doing it for that reason. But just to let you know sort of what she was all about, that even I guess now that she's using the excuse that, oh, well, these Facebook postings are from before I was a member of Congress, which I've only been for like 10 days. So pretty much your entire life is, I guess, by that definition, supposed to be off limits somehow. But how did you spend your time as a private citizen? Before you were even running for Congress, what did you do with your life? And the answer is, I came and harassed kids who were trying to help save the lives of other kids or help in some way to make it such that my friends in high school wouldn't have died in vain in all this. And, well, she's just going to stand in the way and yell and have some assistant videotape her because she's just an American citizen, and he's obviously got outside funding and wealth that he shouldn't have access to, funding what he's doing. Anyway, as it turns out, by the way, I guess the Twitter name for her does have an extra E on the end, and I'm not really sure why that is, but I guess it's real. In case you want to harass her over Twitter, I suppose, MT Green, which should just be MTGreene, but then there's another E. So Greenee. Why? I don't know. The extra E is for I'm a freaking idiot, which doesn't start with that, but if you're a freaking idiot, how would you know? So, all right, I guess that explains a lot. Let's see. I guess some other links to some of her other horrific postings can be found in the link to the K-file stuff that Greg sent to me, and I'm pretty sure I opened it here. Yes, okay. It's to Andrew Kaczynski's Twitter feed, and I guess he's discussing the issue too. New, Marjorie Taylor Greene indicated support for executing prominent Democrats in Facebook comments and videos and likes in 2018 and 2019. I think in the write-up, I guess we might as well look at the CNN write-up of it, she also blames a lot of it on interns, which, oddly enough, in 2018, she probably didn't have any of, and we don't know who they are. But interesting that she had such I guess what she would consider to be a sophisticated political operation based on nothing, and her candidacy nowhere, as far as I know, in 2018. So we'll take a look at what the write-up has to say and what her excuses might be. Greene repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians in 2018 and 19 before being elected to Congress. And in fact, I think for the most part before even running for Congress, but who knows? Maybe this is her second go at it. This a K-file review of hundreds of posts and comments from Greene's Facebook page shows all of this. Greene, who represents Georgia's 14th congressional district, frequently posted far-right extremist and debunked conspiracy theories on her page, including the baseless QAnon conspiracy, which casts former President Donald Trump as in an imagined battle against a sinister cabal of Democrats and celebrities who abuse children, which is just the sort of thing that a patriotic, gun-owning, Constitution lover might, show up on the House floor one day and decide that she's in the right in carrying out some of those executions, or, from the inside, directing outside actors to carry out those executions, as we suspect Lauren Boebert of having done. In one post from January of 2019, Greene liked a comment, and it's always a little bit shaky to worry about what kind of comments people are liking, but okay. Liked the comment that said a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove Nancy Pelosi from the House speakership. In other posts, Greene liked comments about executing FBI agents who, in her eyes, were part of the deep state working against Trump. Sure, why not? In one Facebook post from April 2018, Greene wrote conspiratorially about the Iran deal, one of former President Barack Obama's signature foreign policy achievements. A commenter asked Greene, "Now do we get to hang them?" Meaning H and O, referring to, in reverse order, Hillary and Obama. Greene replied, this is interesting, "Stage is being set. Players are being put in place. We must be patient. This must be done perfectly, or liberal judges would let them off." It's so crazy, I don't even know what to make of it. The first part is rather ominous. Of course, the stage is being set, players being put in place. She's that player. she's going to be put in Congress and in a position to do some of these things. What the idea of liberal judges letting them off, like they were going to round them up and bring them to court or something. But now, of course, they're opting for executing them on the spot, because if you just bring them to court, all the liberal judges will let them off on technicalities like, we don't constitutionally have jurisdiction, let's say, over something like this, which, of course, is something they're perfectly willing to take advantage of over in the Senate right now. The old Law and Order party letting their president off on a technicality, or trying to, and not succeeding. Anyway, after CNN reached out to Greene, her personal Twitter account posted a statement in which she did not deny that she liked posts and replied to comments, but claimed that many people have run her Facebook page. Again, 2018, 2019, at the earliest, I suppose, in 2019, she might have been considering a run for Congress earlier, but the first actions that she actually takes to run for Congress would come at the earliest in 2019. Who's running her Facebook page? Like, she doesn't have time to do it because she's too busy running her CrossFit gym in rural Georgia. I'm sure that makes you busy, but I don't know who she has running her Facebook page. Over the years, I've had teams of people manage my pages. Many posts have been liked. Many posts have been shared. Some did not represent my views. That's nonsense. Especially the ones that CNN is about to spread across the internet, she wrote. If CNN is going to report on it, those are the ones, they're definitely the ones that other people did, for sure. Greene did not specify whether she or a member of her team were behind the posts reviewed by CNN's K-File. She's not going to specify. I'll tell you who's behind them. She is. She didn't have any team running her page. CNN reached out to Pelosi's office for comment multiple times, but didn't receive a response. Though her tenure in Congress has lasted only a few weeks, Greene is already facing calls to leave the House for her role in fanning the flames of the Capitol insurrection earlier this month, after she objected to the election certification process and falsely insisted that Trump would remain president. What's going to be interesting, of course, is watching the press follow her on her way to the Capitol and hound her and not get answers. And it'll be interesting if they say, I thought you said this meant you were a coward. We'll see whether that gets her to turn around or not, or whether she sticks to the tunnels and avoids the press that way and therefore brands herself a coward in that fashion. After Democratic Representative Jimmy Gomez called on Greene to be expelled from the House, and he's not the only one, for her role in the insurrection, Greene condemned the violence at the Capitol and falsely accused Antifa and BLM terrorism and Democratic politicians of stoking the insurrection, which again, they've been doing that for a long time, but just to harp on my favorite talking point about the insurrection, if it were really true, or if you even really believed that it was true, that it was in fact not Trump supporters, but Antifa and Black Lives Matter activists who were behind the violence, why no emergency security protocols for the then President of the United States at the White House just 2 miles away? I am still baffled by that. People were pointing out as part of the timeline of things that Trump's tweet targeting Mike Pence on January 6th and saying that he didn't have the courage to do what was necessary and something, yada, yada, blah, 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 came about 10 to 12 minutes after the vice president's Secret Service detail had finally decided that this was just not a safe place, that they could not secure him versus the crowds that were coming in, and I don't know where they went to. I don't know whether they exited the building through some unknown entrance or whether they just locked down on site in a secure area. And I still don't think we have any answers about where he was. And I don't know if that's going to be publicly disclosed or not. Maybe it's best that it not be publicly disclosed. I don't know. But at any rate, the Secret Service had made the determination that the vice president's life was in enough danger that they were bugging out. They were getting out or locking down or just removing him from the Senate chamber and finding another place that was safer for him. I find it amazing that 10 minutes after the Secret Service has gone on high enough alert on a threat to the vice president, that 2 miles away, Trump is casually tweeting anything at all, Even if he's tweeting, I'm being moved to a secure location, it's too much. How is he sitting on the couch with an unsecured phone, tweeting about anything when the vice president is under such a direct threat? Again, the question has to be asked at some point in some investigation, whether it's in the impeachment proceedings or not, why no security protocols at the White House, and what does it mean? And if the answer is we wanted to, but we got waved off, who waved you off, and what do we think it means that they said with all confidence at the White House that there was no need for any additional security, even though they had overwhelmed all security efforts at the Capitol just 2 miles away. Ordinarily, if you're not in control of the attack, the Secret Service simply says, you know what, it's really not up to you at this point. But somehow, the call was being made by someone else. Well, anyway, okay. This nonsense is leveled by Marjorie Greene. Just, I guess, her current comments now. I fully condemn all violence, except for the gun stuff, which is cool. The Antifa BLM terrorism funded on Act Blue rests with Democrat accomplices like all the people who have actually called her out for her nonsense. Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, Kamala Harris, AOC, Tim Kaine, of all people, and many more. Those who stoke insurrection and spread conspiracies have blood on their hands. They must be expelled, she tweeted. Isn't that something? The people who have blood on their hand have to be expelled. Well, you have blood on your hands. Yes, but I mean them. The blood that isn't on their hands, that I think is what you should be using to expel people. This is a real lunatic, folks. Last week, Greene faced calls to resign from the survivors of the Parkland shooting survivors after Media Matters reported she had agreed with comments calling the 2018 shooting a false flag operation, which refers, of course, to acts that are designed by perpetrators to be made to look like they were carried out by other individuals or groups. CNN's K-File found additional comments from Greene where she called David Hogue, a survivor and activist, hashtag Little Hitler, and spread a conspiracy that he was bought and paid as a bought and paid little pawn and actor. Before she ran for Congress in 2020, now we can figure out what she was up to, Greene created a White House petition in January 2019 to impeach the House Speaker, which is something that they have actual precedent that you can't do, but whatever. Not supposed to impeach members of Congress, but rather the action is to expel them. And no, ordinarily there would be also some pretty serious separation of powers issues, having the Senate decide the impeachment fate of a member of the House. The power to expel remains in the House, and you need the same numbers, 2/3, just the same. So it's a pretty good substitute, pretty well settled, but never mind all of that. And why would you impeach her? You would impeach her, of course, because she's such a scholar, for, quote, crimes of treason. Citing Pelosi's support of so-called sanctuary policies that are, quote, serving illegals and not United States citizens, and because Pelosi did not support Trump's border wall. There you go, crimes of treason. In one speech promoting the petition, Greene suggested Pelosi could be executed for treason. Well, people do get executed for treason. It's what you do with them. But, of course, you have to be guilty first. But if that's a complication, you can always just execute her first and claim to have done it patriotically afterwards. She's a traitor to our country. She's guilty of treason, Greene said in the video, which she posted on Facebook at the time. She took an oath to protect American citizens and uphold our laws. You get familiarized with all of this. And she gives aid and comfort to our enemies who illegally invade our land. That's what treason is. And by our law, representatives and senators can be kicked out and no longer serve in our government. And it's a crime punishable by death is what treason is. Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason. I don't know. I think you can take her name out and put Marjorie Taylor Greene's name in there pretty easily and see how it goes. In another Facebook Live broadcast from inside Pelosi's office on February 22nd, 2019, what's she doing there and why? Trying to get a meeting, I guess. Greene suggested that the House Speaker, quote, will, quote, suffer death or she'll be in prison for her, quote, treason. Really not wise to film that speech inside of her office. Probably should have taken closer note of that at the time. Notably, Greene never mentions a trial, In another broadcast from later that day, she suggested California Representative Maxine Waters was, quote, just as guilty of treason as Nancy Pelosi. It's interesting, though. Wasn't she? She's in this other video complaining, I never get to meet with members of Congress. How did you get 30 meetings with senators? How did she find herself in Nancy Pelosi's office? And I don't know whether she makes it to Maxine Waters' office or not, but I guess if you're just determined and go there, you can ask for a meeting. If they decide that you're a lunatic and don't want to talk to you, well, maybe you should look at the fact that you're a lunatic and evaluate your life. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning. I have good news to report. Many more listeners like you are making critical contributions that keep our show on the air. Makes good sense, of course, and patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple. Now you can make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for helping keep you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all of your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, I mean, there's more, but she's crazy and you know it. And I think probably we move on, for the most part, from Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think, maybe this might even be the same thing that I had set aside. Yeah, okay, so, well, that takes care of another item that was already in pocket, but I'm glad for the direction to the truly important stuff. Thanks to Greg for that one. Let's make a survey of some of the other items about which you might justifiably be concerned. There's an interesting report here from the Wall Street Journal. I don't know how far we get past their paywall on this one, but it seems to be largely a video production, so we might actually be able to see it. And interesting headline here. Video investigation. Proud Boys, remember them? Proud Boys were key instigators in Capitol riot. And I don't think that surprises anyone, but this is just good documentation of their role in it. And I think that they were in the crowd precisely for that purpose. What the Proud Boys were doing there was, or they had, I guess, their most out front Proud Boys, or the rank and file of the Proud Boys has its share of doughy wannabes, but what they all kind of look up to is and they want you to believe that the entirety of their ranks is made up of the same type of person, but they do have some people that I guess you could refer to as more hardened street fighter types who really enjoy throwing a punch, and they are there for the purpose of instigating these fights. And pardon me, one, to try and get their targets to start fighting and resorting to violence as well, so that they can blame it on them, or whether it's through the courtesy of some of their sycophants and hangers-on who video their encounters and then will edit the videos appropriately, or inappropriately in this case, so that they're able to circulate video that makes it look like the other side instigated the violence. But they're also just as happy to attack somebody who professes or hopes, anyway, to stick to a nonviolent stance so that they can't be accused of starting the violence. They're perfectly happy to beat you nonetheless and just have video of themselves beating you and brag on that as well. It's sort of a no-win situation with them. But not surprising. It's calculated. But I think they positioned a lot of their people who love to be involved in throwing the first couple punches to show the crowd that, yeah, you can and should attack the police who are blocking your entry into the Capitol. And nothing is going to happen to stop you, at least not in the immediate sense. It might be the case that they come and round you up several weeks later, but for one thing, most of them don't care about that. And for the last couple of years, of course, they figured on being pardoned for those crimes, or at least not prosecuted, whether that's from pressure from the Trump administration or otherwise. Anyway, and also lots of the other people who would then imitate them would likely be scooped up and arrested later. But again, that too not really considered part of their problem. So anyway, an interesting video presentation. I don't think it makes a great deal of sense to play through it here on the air because so much of it is, well, visual. But I recommend it to you, and I'll put it in the roundup so that you can view it for yourself. But it looks like they chart out exactly where they're spotted in the crowd and what they do and how they instigate the violence. They instigate the situation to move from mass protest that looks very threatening into actual violence and what they had to do with it. So I appreciate their efforts on that front. Let's see. Raising the alarm on another front here. I've seen this story circulated and hyped in, let's say, corners of the internet which are, left-wing and progressive-friendly, but which I don't entirely trust as a source of hard, proven information all the time. They very often, I will say, are borne out in the end. And in many cases, most cases, I think, they provide links to the original stories in more mainstream news outlets upon which they base their story, even if they then extrapolate from that story and give it their own spin, which I appreciate because it gives us the opportunity to look into this thing on our own. So in some of these corners of the internet where hype plays perhaps too large a role, there's been stories circulating in the last couple of days. And by the way, a couple of these hyped stories have been shared with me by a couple of you listening. And I appreciate that you will share them, and I'm glad, and you should absolutely continue to share them. Sometimes I won't immediately go to the same source that you send because I have my doubts, but I usually am curious about where the stories originated, and I'm very often interested in trying to find a more mainstream origin for the story, and we'll share that. So don't worry if something like that happens. I mean, I've definitely seen a couple of things shared where I said, all right, that's great, but for instance, it comes from, and I don't mind naming names. I don't think there's anything wrong with naming names in this case. Is it Seth Abramson, I think, who very frequently, he's somebody who fits into this category where I think he gets out in front of himself, but very frequently I find that when I check into the mainstream sources on it, there's something there, and although I think he gets out in front of it, I get out in front of things like this all the time. I don't blame him for doing it. And you're usually perfectly justified in doing it. Quite honestly, it ends up holding up. But I'm cautious about what I read from him, or I try to be anyway. So anyway, like I said, nothing wrong with sharing that with us. Don't be embarrassed by the fact that it comes from there. I have an obligation to check on things that I pass on too, and we can absolutely do that and absolutely continue to share material that you cull from Seth Abramson or others I think of as similarly situated. Maybe I'm wrong in putting them in the same group. But at any rate, this one does in fact lead back to a more mainstream source, so I want to share that with you. It is the story of Charles Herbster. I don't know whether he pronounces that H in his name or it says Herbster or Herbster. And I've traced it back here to the Omaha World Herald, which is where, again, I don't necessarily, it's not that I'm vouching for the Omaha World Herald necessarily as a source, but it is a more mainstream paper that I guess holds itself to the usual standards of we could get sued pretty badly if we don't fact check some of this stuff. Certainly Seth Abramson could get sued, but I don't know how deep are his pockets versus the Omaha World Herald. Anyway, the story is of the basic story is that there was some sort of meeting alleged to have been held the day before the Capitol insurrection, which lends credence to, the idea that this was a pre-planned event. Well, certainly the rally on the 6th was pre-planned. I guess the extrapolation here is that we're supposed to assume that the attack, the assault on the Capitol that follows the rally was part of the advanced planning. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Maybe you should have been able to see that that's what was going to come of it. Maybe not. That still all needs to be proven. But was there such a meeting? And until I saw it reported elsewhere, I was not real sure about that, because there was lots of discussion of there having been a meeting and then lots of on-the-record denials of having participated in that meeting from the people who alleged to have been there. So now we can at least point to and say, don't blame me, blame the Omaha World-Herald. Here, Charles Herbster, who may run for Nebraska governor, and that's why you need to have him on your radar, was at Trump rally before Capitol violence. This is Omaha World-Herald, Aaron Sanderford reporting this. Slightly less exciting headline than you'll find being given to it elsewhere. They wanted to focus on the fact that there was this meeting, and that the meeting allegedly involved possibly Donald Trump himself, although I think we would have known if he had made the move from White House to his hotel. That would have been more widely reported. But also reported that Donald Jr. and Eric Trump were there. Also this guy, Charles Herbster, whoever he is, and we'll find out more about him, and other plotters and co-conspirators as well. So the news story tells us, hours before a political mob stormed the U.S. Capitol, potential Nebraska gubernatorial candidate Charles Herbster was in the crowd on Wednesday as President Donald Trump rallied supporters near the White House to keep fighting to overturn the election results. Herbster, a Republican who owns a Falls City, Nebraska ranch and a Kansas City area business, said on Facebook that he also met Tuesday in Trump's private residence in his Washington, D.C. hotel. That is interesting that he maintains a private residence there, but I guess he likes to keep private apartments for himself and all of these things. But he met with Trump's sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, and other campaign advisors. They discussed how to pressure more members of Congress to object to the Electoral College results that made Joe Biden the winner. Herbster, who was an agriculture advisor for Trump's 2020 campaign, has made no secret on social media of his friendship and full-throated support for Trump as he gears up for a possible 2022 gubernatorial race. But Wednesday's riot, which Herbster called reprehensible, so there you go, could complicate his strategy of becoming the most pro-Trump candidate in the Nebraska race. Already, Nebraska Democratic Chair Jane Klebb, you all remember Jane, still at the head of the party there too. Eventually, at some point, someone will consider her to be too old for the job and need to be replaced with new blood. That'll be an interesting confrontation when that comes to pass. But all right, well, no, it's to be expected. Anyway, you can look forward to that in the future. Anyway, Jane is highlighting Herbster's backing for the president. She says Nebraskans will not be ready after 8 years of Governor Pete Ricketts to elect another millionaire who continues to back Trump and his violent supporters at the risk of our democracy. We'll see. I hope she's right. It's remarkable that somebody who's running for governor is funding and helping support the insurrection, she said of Herbster. Herbster in his posts defended Trump's great track record of accomplishments in office and condemned the violence. So it's all good now. Let's see. Ricketts and other Nebraska Republicans have also condemned the pro-Trump violence at the Capitol. Trump's legal team and supporters have filed and lost more than 60 lawsuits alleging election problems. You know all about all of that. Herbster attended the rally where Trump urged supporters to march to the Capitol, but says, and probably true, he probably came in a suit and everything, he left the area to fly home before the riot. That ought to be easily established. If true, he said he agrees with Trump that Congress should listen to the millions of Americans who have questions about the election's integrity. Blah, blah, blah. Nonsense, nonsense. But there you go. Anyway, this at least establishes Herbster's claim at having been in the private residence at the hotel with the two sons. The extrapolation that's come on top of this on the internet, of course, is that the topic of discussion was Wednesday's activities and the unproven question still out there, or the unanswered question. How much did they know about how much violence there was going to be, and was that a part of their plan? But anyway, just wanted to at least put this guy on your radar in case the stories are borne out in the next couple of days, as I said, is frequently the case, even with these internet speculators. It's hard not to be proven right when you speculate that Trumpsters are doing something criminal and dangerous, more than just obnoxious. You will be borne out more often than you might otherwise expect to be the case. All right, let's see. Other stories that I wanted to bring to your attention. Here's one that's relatively humorous. So I'll bring it out now, and we'll see if Greg has any comments on it on tomorrow's show. Part of me wants to save it, but it's a busy agenda while he's on the air, and we want to let him get to what he wants. But in case he wants to comment on this one tomorrow, I don't know. What is this source? Another Oklahoma-based source called The Frontier, which you can find at readfrontier.org. What is it? I'm not entirely sure. But maybe you'll have some better idea if you are from Oklahoma. But here's the headline. Oklahoma trying to return its $2 million stockpile of hydroxychloroquine. Remember that? And everybody then said, ooh, President Trump, he knows what he's talking about. We should absolutely all stock hydroxychloroquine. It's the miracle cure. And where Trumpist idiots were in charge of state budgets, they went and took your hard-earned tax dollars. Well, it's really true. And blew it on hydroxychloroquine. And now, I'm sure for some time they've known, wow, did we ever waste our money on that? Even when Trump had COVID, he didn't touch hydroxychloroquine. We are idiots for having listened to that. Well, the Oklahoma Attorney General's office, it says here, has been tasked with attempting to return a $2 million stockpile of the malaria drug once touted by former President Donald Trump as a way to treat the coronavirus. And I guess they've decided it isn't. The Oklahoma Attorney General's office has been tasked with this job. In April, Governor Kevin Stitt, who really, I guess, ought to be taking care of this himself, Norm Ornstein, and after seeing this story, said, you should make the governor pay for it out of pocket. Pay it yourself. Kevin Stitt ordered the hydroxychloroquine purchase, defended it at that time by saying that while it may not be a useful treatment for the coronavirus, the drug had multiple other uses, and that money will not have gone to waste in any respect. What a quote to have come back and haunt you. Is malaria a huge problem in Oklahoma? I don't know. Anyway, nearly a year later, the state is trying to offload the drug back to its original supplier, California-based FFF Enterprises Incorporated, a private pharmaceutical wholesaler. And I would absolutely have said, who's selling this to us for $2 million? FFF Enterprises. Sounds legit. Give them the $2 million. What's their return policy? Anyway, Alex Gerzewski, a spokesman for Oklahoma Attorney General Mike Hunter, that's his real name, told The Frontier this week that the AG's office was working with the state health department, quote, to try to figure out a solution. The solution is punch the governor in the face and make him pay $2 million. But, you're not supposed to do that. But you can ask him to pay the $2 million. Let's see. Gerzewski said Hunter's office had gotten involved at the request of the Oklahoma State Department of Health. Stitt was criticized last year for the $2 million purchase, a move viewed by some as a partisan move to curry favor with conservatives who were defending Trump amid criticism of his own support of the drug. But Stitt defended the purchase at the time by likening it to the race early last year to procure personal protective equipment for Oklahomans, believing it was better to have the hydroxychloroquine stockpile and not need it rather than to later learn the drug was useful but not have it. Stitt's spokeswoman Carly Atchison told The Frontier last week that, quote, every decision the governor makes is with the health and lives of Oklahomans in mind, including purchasing hydroxychloroquine, securing PPE, and now distributing vaccines as quickly and efficiently as possible to combat this COVID crisis. The state purchased the hydroxychloroquine stockpile in early April, days after Trump began to tout it as a treatment. While many acknowledged at the time that the reports of the drug's effectiveness were purely anecdotal, Trump said in a briefing in March, "What do we have to lose? I feel very good about it." Well, he has nothing to lose. Oklahomans have $2 million to lose, and it looks like they're going to lose it. Health officials nationwide immediately began to caution people against using the drug, throwing water on the idea that it could cure a coronavirus infection and cautioning that it could have serious side effects, including irregular heart rhythms and possibly even death. The drug was ultimately discredited as a treatment option, and the National Institutes of Health released a report in November that the drug had no clinical benefit to hospitalized patients. Another side effect, of course, is losing $2 million. Though more than 20 states ultimately bought hydroxychloroquine drugs for potential use against COVID-19, Oklahoma, along with Utah, was one of only 2 states who purchased the drug from private wholesalers, according to the Associated Press. I'm not certain what difference that makes, but I wonder if they have worse return policies. Stitt wasn't alone in his support for hydroxychloroquine as a treatment for the coronavirus. In August, Representative Justin Humphrey, Republican, state legislator there, promoted hydroxychloroquine as a viable treatment after he contracted COVID-19. Though the drug has been widely discredited at that point, Humphrey, who has recently made news for seeking to establish a Bigfoot hunting season in Oklahoma. Just to say what level is the hydroxychloroquine purchase on. Well, it was championed by the same guy who wanted to pass a law allowing a Bigfoot hunting season. But it's nice to look for Bigfoot. Sounds like fun, a little frustrating. But you're also going to kill him? Really? Seems weird. Anyway, he also made waves in 2017 when he referred to pregnant women as hosts. Man. What more do you need to know about this guy? He encouraged Oklahomans to, quote, take courage and begin treating COVID with hydroxychloroquine. It's unclear yet how much of the initial $2 million investment in the hydroxychloroquine the state could recoup. FFF Enterprises did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So we'll see what developments there may be in the future on that front. It would be, nice for them to be able to get their money back, but also funny for them not to. We'll see. All right. Report briefly on health matters in the Senate. You may have noticed or heard late last night that Senator Pat Leahy, who is about 80 years old or so, and who has been in the chair presiding over the at least the early proceedings in the preparations for the Trump impeachment trial. By the way, let's see, he had to oversee the vote on Rand Paul's stupid motion yesterday, or rather the tabling motion over what Rand Paul had to, or his excuse for derailing things, and then swear everybody in as jurors, and then they all had to swear or sign the oath book. That's a special sort of little bit of ceremony that goes along with these impeachment hearings. And Rand Paul, of course, did the whole thing maskless. And, hey, by some strange coincidence, in addition to making his speech in the well of the Senate, or maybe from his desk, I don't know, and then coming to the well of the Senate to sign the book, apparently Pat Leahy not feeling all that hot last night and admitted to the hospital for observation, once again out of an abundance of caution. But every time I hear those words, particularly with relation to, not feeling all that well during a general pandemic, it doesn't always work out that well. But anyway, it turns out he seems to be fine. And a tweet that caught my attention with a still photo of him back in the chair and presiding this morning. What business might be being transacted with respect to the impeachment, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe some of the subpoenas to the Trump team and notifying them that they have an opportunity to file an answer to the articles of impeachment might have been what was on the table this morning. But it seems fine. Leahy back in the chair. We have best wishes for his health. Of course, lots of people pointing out Vermont has a Republican governor. And perhaps it's something to watch out for. And of course, it's not even close to being beneath Mitch McConnell to play on the prospect of the death of a Democratic senator in a state with a Republican governor as an opportunity to exercise additional power or pull out of power sharing agreements. He's certainly done it in the past. I told you about what happened with Tim Johnson when he was in the hospital. Expect the same sort of thinking to be going on in his offices. But okay, good to report that he's back in the chair. Another thing that we'll have to discuss in the coming days here, I find myself back in the unenviable position of both having to explain and being continually confused by the reconciliation process. I had a pretty good handle on what it was all about, but it's such a nebulous and gray area. The rules surrounding reconciliation, we have only the most general sense of what the rules are supposed to be. And of course, many cases calls on germaneness and permissibility of certain items for reconciliation are always going to be a gray area. They're judgment calls on the part of the parliamentarian. But what's weird is I've got this little bit here from the Hill's Twitter feed, and maybe I should just go in there and play it for you. And it is a video of the chairman of the House Budget Committee, John Yarmuth, discussing the possibilities of reconciliation. And just listen to the way he puts things here.
Kate, good to be with you. We don't have to wait at all.
I shouldn't have.
Look at this as kind of...
Yeah, let me, again, pump up the volume on some of this. He's being interviewed by somebody, and they're asking him questions about, how quickly do you plan to move on, one, on reconciliation, and two, on COVID relief, whether that's in the form of checks or something else or more than that or whatever. What does he have to say here?
Well, Kate, good to be with you. We don't have to wait at all. As a matter of fact, we could look at this as kind of a parallel track. We are prepared to go to the floor as early as next week with a reconciliation resolution. And the committees that are involved are all working this week. We'll be ready to go. Those negotiations that are happening now can continue. We can pass our budget reconciliation instructions and get them over to the Senate. And then if they reach an agreement, which would be great, we'd all prefer a bipartisan agreement, then we can just withdraw those reconciliation instructions and use that process for something else down the road. But we're going to move ahead.
So this is something we really I'm going to need more explanation for, and I'm not entirely sure. It would have helped, I think, to have heard the question that was posed to him. But and also I think there may be some use of some imprecise language, which is always unfortunate from the authority on things like this, the budget chairman. But as you may remember from previous explanations on the show, in order to use reconciliation at all, it is required that the budget resolution for that fiscal year, there's some asterisks on that one, but a budget resolution for the upcoming fiscal year has to include reconciliation instructions to specific committees, instructing them how much money they're supposed to look for, usually in terms of savings in the budget, and where they can look for it. And that after the budget resolution is adopted, then they can begin work on a reconciliation bill. But the way Yarmuth puts it here, it sounds like he's saying they're ready to move on a reconciliation bill as soon as this week or next week, which would appear to be an impossibility without actually having a budget resolution with reconciliation instructions in place. It may be that last year's budget had reconciliation instructions and they are thinking about acting on that. It may be that his language is imprecise and that what he means is that they want to move a shell budget resolution that includes reconciliation instructions in it next week. I think what's happening here, we'll work on trying to clarify it, is that they're really pushing it in terms of parliamentary tricks here. It's interesting to watch. They might be moving a shell budget that may or may not address budget issues of any other kind, but do nothing but carry reconciliation instructions in it so that the Senate can move forward with COVID relief being passed under the reconciliation's more favorable filibuster-proof rules. And then they may either revise the budget and pass a real one. They might build on whatever they put in this budget. Or, he says, they might withdraw the reconciliation instructions once the bill has passed and say, we're going to do new ones in a for-real budget, not a shell budget, after that. And maybe even take a second crack at using the reconciliation procedure to pass something else that might otherwise fall subject to the filibuster. What an interesting idea that is. Very bold. I don't think I've seen that done yet.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Definitely want to follow up on that one, and that might take some off-air research in order to make sense of. I hope we got it right. We'll find out in the coming days. Anyway, stay tuned now for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I'm sure they won't be covering the reconciliation aspect of things, but, you know, the usual roundup of all the stuff we've missed.